Hello friends, glad to have you here. Welcome back to Actia, a channel that does everything almost. Now you may have noticed that the channel art is a little lacking, or at least at the time of recording. How about we fix that? Today we're going to be doing a little bit of graphic design and make both the banner and the logo for the channel. This episode will probably be on the shorter side, but after the last two episodes I'm glad to mix things up. Okay, without further ado, let's get graphic designing. For the banner, my idea is to create a sort of search bar, like you might find on YouTube, with the beginning of the channel's name filled in. Then there would be autocomplete options for the various genres with everything highlighted as the first option. Now I could use image editing software to achieve this result, but instead I want to embrace my computer science background and do something a little fancier. In case you're unaware, you're able to inspect the HTML source code for a website by choosing the Inspect Element or similar option in your browser. From here you can hover over various components to jump to that block in the source code. You can even edit the HTML and the change will be reflected on the web page. Now to make the banner, we can open the source HTML on the YouTube homepage and navigate to the block corresponding to the autocomplete suggestions. Changing the content, we can make the first option everything in bold. Similarly, we can edit the second option to say baking, the first genre I made a video for on this channel. While we're at it, let's also delete the report search predictions link. Now to add more options, we can simply duplicate the node and change its text. Let's add some for the other genres I've already done. Finally, let's add some meta humor by referencing this episode. And why not? A mild spoiler for an upcoming episode in the works. And to end off the list, some ellipses. The last step is to take a screenshot and format it for the banner. Unfortunately, the YouTube banner has different sizes for different platforms, so combinate them all, this is what I ended up with. I had to cut off some of the options to fit in the space, but oh well, I think the effect still works. As for the logo, this was a bit trickier to design. A logo should reflect the channel's brand, which in my case is, well, everything. But how can I convey everything in a single logo? Well, in my opinion, one particular item encapsulates the concept of everything better than anything else. The everything bagel. No, seriously, I want to draw a bagel. Yeah, it's a dumb idea, but it's just the right amount of dumb for this channel. Something that still just about makes sense, but definitely doesn't take itself too seriously. We'll start with a blank canvas and use the circle tool to create a big brown circle. Next, using the circle selection tool, we'll select then delete the center to make a hole. I made sure to make it small enough else our bagel looked more like a donut. Next, I wanted to add some texture to the flat color. My first attempt was to add some streaks, and if you're not a fan of them, don't worry, I wasn't either. I'll change it a bit later. Around this time I also decided the bagel needs some shading, so let's add that too. As a tip for shading, use a watercolor or partially transparent brush to add a lighter and darker color to the edges. Make sure you know where your light source is and keep it consistent. Now this won't look that good right now, but after applying a blur filter, this shading becomes much more subtle. Which is good, since bagels aren't typically shiny. Next, let's add the popping sesame seeds. I used a center brush and dabbed some dots around. Again, if you don't like this result, don't worry, I changed this later too. At this point, I decided that the streaks weren't working for me, so I found a good texture brush and used that instead. The result is much better. I also found a good texture brush for adding little dots, so I used that to replace my old seeds. At first I was having a hard time with the sesame seeds, as it kept looking more like powdered sugar. But then I realized that the sesame seeds aren't pure white and have a more yellow tint to them. Adjusting the color and I think the bagel is just about done. The last step is to add a background. I wanted a gradient, so I used a similar technique to the shading. Add streaks of color to the background, then apply a blur to make the transition smooth. After testing the logo on YouTube, I ended up scaling down the bagel a bit and making the background more transparent. I also made a second variant using warm colors instead of cool colors. I prefer the warm colors in the end, but I kept the other variant in case I ever want it. After uploading to the channel, I would say this is quite the improvement. so that wraps up making the channel art. But how would I rate my experience overall? Honestly, maybe a 4 out of 5. This was a lot more fun than I was expecting, and honestly, I think the results are quite awesome. I usually don't consider myself the best at art, but then again, maybe next time I should try something a little more ambitious than a bagel. And that'll just about do it for today's episode. Have a good morning, evening, or night, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, guys.